I was out of choices after being turned down for jobs on several occasions. I felt like my life was over after my most recent interview that changed my life. The CEO, who had been silent up until that point, interrupted me as I was ready to leave the venue. "Where did you get that floral tie?" "This one, huh?" The CEO's face went ghostly pale when I spoke, which set up an unexpected turn of events. "David Jones is my name. My dad and I have been together ever since my mom passed away from illness when I was a child. Elementary school was the most challenging time to be a single parent. Sam, my father, showed me all of my parents' affection, including taking time off work to go to school functions. However, the fact that he was the only father among the mothers mortified me. "Dad, please, you don't have to come to school anymore." "What do you say?" Parents have a responsibility to attend their children's classes. As a father who was inherently serious and honest, he was unable to comprehend my feelings as a youngster. I began keeping school events hidden from my father because I was annoyed with him. "Isn't it time for your field trip, David? I'll leave work to accompany you." This year, it was canceled. "Do not be concerned." I said a falsehood. I snuck a $10 out of Dad's wallet to buy lunch on the day of the field trip. However, a few days later, Dad confronted me after learning about the trip from the mother of a classmate. "Why did you say the field trip was canceled?" "I'm sorry." "What did you do for lunch?" "I bought it at the store." "Where did the money come from?" I finally confessed to stealing money from his wallet. Expecting a harsh scolding, I was surprised when Dad silently handed me another $10. "If you stole money, it's because your allowance wasn't enough. That's on me. I'll increase your allowance from now on." "Dad, don't steal again." "I'm sorry." I cried as he gently hugged me. Dad always sought the reasons behind my mistakes before scolding me. It's crucial to clarify the reasons. Once we know why, we can prevent it from happening again. My respect for Dad, whom I once found annoying, began in middle school. He was busy with work and couldn't attend school events. The end-of-year big cleanup was planned to be carried out by all students, with each class's officers helping. But my father couldn't participate. That night, my father didn't come home, even though he should have finished his overtime work. As the snow began to fall, I took an umbrella and went to the station to pick him up. As I took a shortcut past the middle school, I saw someone whistling in the dark. When I shone my flashlight, it turned out to be my dad. During the school-wide cleanup that he couldn't attend, I found him at night, cleaning weeds in the schoolyard after work. Seeing my dad diligently fulfilling his duty amidst the falling snow, my heart was overwhelmed with emotion. "Dad, you'll catch a cold." "Hey, David, I'll be done soon." I held an umbrella over my father as he knelt down, pulling weeds. Seeing the clean yard, I felt proud of my dad for the first time. I admired my father. He left for work every morning in a suit. When home alone, I once took his suit out of the dresser and tried it on. Among the ties hanging inside, there was one with a floral pattern, his favorite. I once asked my dad, who was wearing a floral tie, as he looked in the mirror, "That tie is really nice, isn't it?" "Yes, it is. I wear this tie only on special days. Someday I want to wear that tie too." "It's too early for you, David. I'll give it to you when you graduate college and start working." "Really? You promise, right?" "It's a definite promise," he laughed, and we made a pinky promise. However, in my second year of middle school, my father was hospitalized and passed away unexpectedly. Though his surgery was successful and he was recovering well, his condition suddenly worsened. Maybe he had a premonition of his death, but before passing, he called me to his hospital room and handed me the floral tie. "Take good care of this tie." "Can I really have it?" "Well, thank you." Seeing me struggle to tie it properly, he smiled. That night, my father passed away. The floral tie became a keepsake of my father. After his death, I was taken in by my paternal grandparents and started attending school from their house. Maybe because they felt sorry for me losing my mother at a young age, My grandparents really doted on me. I grew really close to them too. Having lost both my mother and father to illness, I found myself all alone. But thankfully, I was able to get back on my feet thanks to my grandparents' support. They were poor, so I couldn't ask for new gym clothes. My grandmother, skilled in sewing, repaired my torn gym clothes by hand. It was a bit embarrassing, but I wore the patch-covered gym clothes to make her happy. Doesn't David's gym clothes look weird? They're patched up so lame. The boys in my class made fun of me for wearing gym clothes full of patches. I became their target, often ambushed on my way home from school. "Hey David, you can easily shoplift from the convenience store. The old lady has bad eyesight. Steal something, anything." But I refused. My father, who lived a life of honesty and integrity, was my pride. I couldn't tarnish that pride. "You insolent jerk." The boys circled me, ready to throw punches. "Back off, guys. If you're going to fight, do it one-on-one." Standing in front of me, blocking the way, was my classmate Bob, a member of the judo club. He was a school hero who'd even won a county tournament. The boys backed off with wry smiles. "Thanks, Bob." After I thanked him, Bob said, "You know, I've always thought you were a great guy, David." "Really? Why?" "Wearing that patched gym clothes with such pride, it shows guts. It's not that ragged." "Oops, sorry about that." From then on, Bob and I became best friends. Dad promised to give me his favorite floral tie when I graduated college and got a job. But since I didn't want to be a financial burden to my grandparents, I decided to enter the workforce immediately after graduating high school. Working at a small-town factory meant no suits or floral ties for me. At the factory, we handled everything from tiny screws to large machinery, working in shifts. During the late shift, I had to work through the night until morning, so I decided to move into the dormitory located behind the factory. Inheriting sincerity and earnestness from my father, I diligently tackled every small task that came my way. Having you here, David, has truly been a lifesaver. Work's been going smoother than before, and the factory manager is thrilled. I was happy to be praised by the older ladies I worked with. I realized that working hard sincerely helps everyone, so I started to put even more effort into my job. 3 years later, I was called into the factory manager's office. "Thanks to your hard work, David, we've got more orders. How about being the supervisor of the administration section?" "But I'm only 21. Is that okay?" Age doesn't matter in the real world. It's all about skills. So, joining the company right out of high school, I was promoted to the position of foreman at the site in just my 3rd year, but my joy was short-lived. 6 months later, the situation at the small-town factory took a turn. Suddenly, our parent company merged with a large corporation, and a new boss arrived. The manager, named Johnson, constantly bragged about his high educational background and elite status. Nowadays, small-town factories are creating innovative products that amaze the world. It's no longer the era of hiring only high school graduates. True to his word, new employees who graduated from university science programs began to join our factory. While Manager Johnson fawned over the employees with college degrees, he blatantly ridiculed high school graduates like me. "Hey, David, you've got a decent name, but just a high school diploma. Aren't you embarrassed? Maybe you should change your name." "No, my father gave me this name, idiot." "You're obviously joking. This is just what high school grads are like." "I'm sorry." "Why are you apologizing? Did you mess up something?" "No, it's not like that." "Then no need to apologize. I hate the resentment of high school grads." This kind of interaction happened daily, and I was fed up. Ever since Director Johnson arrived, the factory's production capacity has significantly declined. When the factory manager scolded him, Johnson took out his frustration on me. He deliberately spilled a box of screws I had packed for shipping. "It's your fault for putting it here. Hey, David, pick up the screws. If one is missing, you're fired." I picked up each screw scattered on the factory floor and repacked them into the cardboard box, but no matter what, I just couldn't find one missing screw. Crawling on the floor, I found it near a drain. Just as I reached out to pick up the screw with a sigh of relief, someone's foot kicked it into a drainage grate. Ah, the crucial screw. As I looked up, it was Manager Johnson standing there. I looked up dejected, and he smirked, so serious about a single screw. This is why high school grads are ridiculed. Feeling really irked, I retorted, with all due respect, manager, isn't seriousness and integrity crucial for work? Seriousness and integrity. You won't get ahead with that nowadays. But then again, there's no advancement for high school guys like you anyway. I barely contained my explosive anger. My clenched fists trembled with anger. The factory manager had assigned a task to all employees to come up with ideas to improve productivity. The ideas generated by each employee were collected by Manager Johnson. He would then present them at a planning meeting. I suggested that valuing seriousness and integrity in workers would boost motivation. My proposal was well received at the planning meeting. However, Manager Johnson claimed my idea as his own, presenting it as if he had thought of it. Seriousness and integrity. Quite a catchy phrase. If we instill this in all employees, productivity will surely increase. Typical of a college graduate. Well done, Manager Johnson. My idea was credited to Johnson. Fearing I might expose him, he used a minor mistake as an excuse to try to transfer me to a remote factory. David, go train in the countryside for a while. Is it because I'm an eyesore to you? What do you mean? If you're joking around, I'll fire you. Understood. I quit. I've had enough of working under a despicable man like you. I confronted Johnson and left the factory. Evicted from the dormitory, I had no choice but to return to my grandparents. They worried about my unemployment. A hard-working kid like you quitting your job. Are you feeling unwell? Don't worry. I'll find another job soon. Not wanting them to worry, I spent my days looking for work. However, finding a job was difficult. I later found out that the interviewer had called my previous workplace, the small-town factory, to inquire about the reasons for my resignation. The person who answered the call was Johnson, my former boss. Thanks to being falsely maligned, I didn't get hired. Unaware of this sabotage, I was disheartened by my prolonged unemployment. Hey, isn't that you, David? Then one day, I ran into Bob, my old friend from middle school. Bob, is that you? It's been a while. What's wrong? You don't look too good. Well, actually, when I confessed I was having trouble finding a job, he patted my shoulder and smiled. Don't worry. My dad's friend just started a new factory, and they're looking for someone with factory experience. I'll introduce you. Really? That would be great. Thanks. Bob made a call right there and a week later, I was set to go for an interview at this new factory. On the morning of the interview, I decided to wear my father's suit. Of course, wearing the floral tie I never had the chance to wear. A suit was a rare thing for me because I worked in the town factory right after graduating school. Seeing me in a suit for the first time, my grandmother said from the back, "You look just like your late father. It suits you well." This floral tie, it's nice, isn't it? It was my dad's favorite. Wearing the suit, I felt as if my father was with me, and I headed to the interview with confidence. In the waiting room, several other applicants were gathered. According to what I heard, only one person would be hired. Hearing that, even I couldn't help but feel nervous. When my name was called, I walked into a room where Mr. Smith, the president, and 3 HR staff were waiting. After introducing myself, the HR team bombarded me with questions. The hardest moment was explaining why I left my previous job. I was honest about the reasons. I thought to myself, they must have called my old factory and heard all sorts of things from Johnson. This might not work out. It was when I was feeling down and about to leave the room that Mr. Smith, the president, who hadn't said a word until then, stopped me. "Where did you get that floral tie?" It's a keepsake from my late father." Suddenly, Mr. Smith broke down in tears. Surprised, I just stood there. Through his tears, he asked, "Was your dad's name, by any chance, Sam?" "Yes, Sam. But how do you know that?" I was puzzled about why the president knew my father's name. Mr. Smith, wiping his tears, explained that the suit and tie were made by my mother for Sam. That floral pattern on the tie is quite unique, so I remember it well. According to Mr. Smith, the president, my dad Sam, used to be his subordinate back in the day. Your dad was a sincere and honest man, someone I, as the president, could really respect. My mother was very fond of Sam. His mother owned a bespoke suit shop and had gifted a suit to my dad. He always wore worn-out suits at that time. There was no tie to go with the suit, so my mother handmade this tie. She embroidered the floral pattern herself. Is that so? When you entered the room in that suit and tie, I thought Sam had come back. He continued, tears streaming down his face. Mr. Smith, the president, placed great trust in my father's integrity, and they worked together to expand the business. Sam really liked that tie. Whenever there was an important deal, he always wore that floral tie. It was his lucky tie for big occasions. Whenever he wore it, we secured contracts. After hearing this, Mr. Smith's mother was overjoyed, and the company thrived. However, one day, the president's mother fell seriously ill and had to be hospitalized. The president, deeply loving his mother, decided to step back from the business to dedicate himself to her care. Without Mr. Smith, my father lost his drive and left the company. After that, they never met again. I see. Sam passed away from an illness. I wish I could have met him at least once when he was alive. He always told me to live earnestly and sincerely. And before he passed away, he gave me this tie. Mr. Smith gently stroked the floral tie, his touch filled with reverence. I ended up working under Mr. Smith, just like the team my dad and the president used to be. The floral tie became my lucky charm for crucial deals, leading each to success. As the new factory grew, I quickly rose to the position of factory manager. Even during important contract presentations, I wore the floral tie. In the meeting room, there was another company from a rival factory. It was at the factory I had resigned from before, and the one presenting was none other than Director Johnson. Johnson approached me and whispered softly in my ear, "With just a high school education, becoming a factory manager, your end is already in sight. You'd be better off running away with your tail between your legs." As usual, Johnson. When I easily dodged his remark, Johnson returned to his seat with a displeased expression, and then the presentation battle took place. In the end, I won the contract. Seemingly frustrated at losing to me, a high school graduate, Johnson grabbed my shirt, hurled insults at me, and then stormed off. He was fired from the factory as a result of his actions. The factory's performance started to deteriorate as soon as this negative reputation circulated across the industry. The facility was eventually shut down a year later. For the executives who were blind to Johnson's actual character, it was a case of poetic justice. Mr. Smith's long-ailing mother recovered when the plant closed. Sam came to visit, she said, embracing me with tears in her eyes. "Your dad was a decent and trustworthy man. Continue to work hard, just like he did." Yes, I will live honestly and sincerely in a way that would not bring shame to this tie. I was thankful to Mr. Smith, his mother, and Bob for giving me this chance, and I promised to keep up my good life in remembrance of my father.